Alright, I just listened to some Immortal, so I'm feeling fired up right now. So I'm going to tackle this topic I said I was going to tackle, and I'm going to tackle it. The issue is gun control and guns in America. Now, for those of you who know me, you know my background. I lived in Japan for 5 years, a country that has pretty much eliminated all gun violence altogether. Um, it is very taboo in Japanese society to own a gun. Legally, you can. You It's heavily restricted, but yes, you can own a gun in Japan. But to me, one of the major things I learned about Japanese society is that even though you can own a gun theoretically, the general consensus is, well, why would you even want to own a thing like that? I mean, the purpose of a gun is to kill things. Why do you want to kill things? So, to me, my problem with guns centers on their very central purpose. People will talk about how they own guns for protection and all that, but that protection involves basically killing. I saw a t-shirt on a customer where I worked, and I didn't say anything, and I didn't exhibit any outward emotion towards it, but his shirt said something to the equivalent of, no, we don't need our guns to kill deer, but that's not what the Second Amendment is about. The implied meaning is we own guns so we can kill people. And I don't find that to be a very healthy way of thinking. I'm not saying all gun owners share that kind of point of view, but I do take away what I learned in Japan. Now, when backstory on me, of course, you already, as I have mentioned, I lived in Japan for 5 years. I was a teacher over there. I taught English at a Japanese high school for 5 years. I returned to America to go to graduate school. Now, within maybe a couple of months of me returning to America, the Sandy Hook shooting happened. And it was kind of a rude awakening. I mean, I had been in high school when the Columbine shooting happened, and I guess I should have known better to think that something would change in the aftermath of this, but of course it didn't. You had this deranged person who had guns legally. That's the thing these friggin' Republicans and gun nuts don't realize, is that the people that commit these things, they typically obtain these guns legally. So, therefore, should we not make it more difficult to legally obtain a gun? I don't see the fault in that reasoning, but apparently I try to respect the beliefs of the militant gun owners and all that, but I'll be straight up honest, you really make me angry because, in my opinion, you are part of why I do not like this country. You are the problem with this country. It I don't have any problem with a person owning a gun if it is a legitimate need. If you live like up in the sticks in Alaska and you have to deal with bears and stuff like that, yes, you should own a gun for simple protection and all of that. But as a person who comes from a family in which a gun was never owned. I am 33 years old. And when I was growing up, my family never owned guns. And since I became an adult, I think you can tell I'm pretty impassioned about this, but since I became an adult, I really have not ever felt the need to own a gun. So, 33 years without a gun. Maybe it isn't a necessity. That is what these gun people try to say. They try to say, oh, we need them. No, you don't need them, and I am willing, and I am living proof. I think that is the main gist of my point. But I'll go into a little bit further detail. Now, these gun advocate people make the argument, oh, well, if you take away the guns, the criminals don't care about the gun laws. They'll just have the guns and all the innocent, law-abiding people won't have guns. And I'm sorry, but again, most gun crime happens with legally bought guns. It doesn't happen with illegal black market stuff. Yes, guns will always be present in our society even if we outlaw them. But if you make them more difficult to obtain, I'm sorry, but the evidence is not on your side. Take a look at places like Australia and the UK, and of course Japan. When you basically get rid of guns altogether, gun crime goes down. Bottom line. And the NRA does not seem to want to face this fact, the fact that greater gun control results in fewer gun deaths. It's perfectly demonstrated, and yet people can't get it through their heads. And it makes me so very angry. America, we need to be smarter than this. We must be smarter than this. We are becoming... I'm sorry, but I was not really a fan of my native country when I went off to Japan. And when I went to Japan, I was able to kind of look at America from afar, and part of my job was actually trying to diplomatically defend America. And trust me, during my first year or so, this was difficult because this was during the George W. Bush administration. But the topic of guns was a frequent one among my co-teachers. And many of my students were terrified of ever coming to America because, and the most frequent argument is, there are so many guns. And kind of the implicit thing is, those people are dangerous, they're violent. And it made me really sad. And I really did try to defend this country. I said, well, you know, most gun owners are perfectly law-abiding people. Many of them are hunters. And, you know, we Americans are kind of pride ourselves on our self-reliance. And we like the ability to defend ourselves and our ability to, kill our own food and all that. But the strange thing is, it was easy to say that while I was over in Japan. I returned back to the States. The Sandy Hook shooting happened. Nothing happened, and I realized if something like this is not going to change things in America, nothing is. And since then, I have just watched shooting after shooting after shooting, and every time it happens, it's just the same thing. You know, some people say, oh, we need more gun control, and then, the pro-gun people say, no, it's not the guns, it's the people, it's the mental illness, it's video games and all that other stuff. Well, I'm sorry, but again, to remind you of reality, the UK, Australia, they also have video games. They do not have the level of gun deaths that we do. They do not have the level of mass shooters that we do. So the problem is not video games. I will concede that maybe among certain disturbed individuals, playing something might influence them in some way, but not as much as having a gun readily available and legally obtainable. So I'm a gamer. I play a whole lot of very violent stuff, and I have no desire to harm any other human being or to own a gun. So your argument is invalid. Wow, I gotta say, that Immortal song really kind of gave me some strength here. So, I guess I'll wrap up because I really feel like I've made the point I wanted to make. So, my advice to Americans is just try to be a little smarter. I know this seems I don't know what to do about my own country. I just feel so frustrated that we keep making these mistakes over and over again. It keeps happening and we do nothing about it. And all that happens is the usual rounds of BS. And let's stop conjecturing about what is the root cause of the problem. Is it because people are immoral? Is it because they are mentally unstable or whatever? There's going to be bad people and mentally unstable people in every country What we have to do is ensure that those people do not harm other people. And that comes, at least in my opinion, in terms of guns, with very tight very tight gun control. In my opinion, to own a gun in America, you should have a few things. Number one, obviously, you should be at least 18. Number two, you should have a clean criminal record. Number three, you should have a clean psychological record. And in my opinion, since a lot of these shooters clearly have mental issues but have not sought treatment for them, I kind of think you should have to undergo a certain psychological evaluation to be declared competent to own a gun. Number four, you need a good reason for owning that gun. Okay, don't give me this whole bullshit about you need it to protect your family and all that. Just don't, because the problem I have with that argument is I need to protect my family by killing other people. And even if a person is trying to attack your family, let's try to seek non-lethal means. Okay? You can't reason with all people, but at the same time, you shouldn't just shoot a person on sight. We're seeing this with the recent shootings of unarmed black men in our country. So just shooting a person is not a good solution to a problem. We have to treat our society as a whole. And in my opinion, part of that, part of the solution to this problem is major gun reform. Let's seriously restrict gun ownership. I'm not advocating taking away guns from responsible people. I'm in favor of very harsh screening, and if you pass those screens and you are perfectly mentally competent, you are perfectly responsible, and you use your gun responsibly, yes, you should be able to have one. Didn't even realize I had gone over the 15-minute mark. I'll wrap up this video because I know it's getting long. I'll wrap this up by kind of questioning the basic thing that these, the NRA people and these, I really don't know of any other term than gun nut people, and that is the Second Amendment. And they latch on to the fact that the Second Amendment says the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. Well, and I hope if you're an intelligent gun owner, you should have read the Second Amendment fully. Most people forget the first part of the Second Amendment, which says, and I'm gonna probably not quote this perfectly, but it says, a well-regulated militia being vital to again, I don't know the exact wording of it. I don't memorize it because quite frankly, the right to own a gun is not an important thing to me, but it says, in essence, the way I have read it and the way teachers have read it to me is if you look at it as the whole, it says the state has the right to form militias, and the militias have the right to bear arms. Not everyone. The Second Amendment does not say everyone has the right to bear arms. If you think that, you're ignoring the first part of that amendment. And state militias don't really exist anymore, in my opinion. That kind of makes the Second Amendment obsolete. The Second Amendment had its place at its given time in history. When we were a young nation, when we were a young nation, a gun was something that was very useful and necessary. At least, I hope, at least in terms of, protection from the wilderness. Of course, back then, the need for a gun probably also meant the need to, subdue slave rebellions and fight against the Native Americans who were pissed off about the land you stole from them. But yeah, the Second Amendment has become an obsolete thing. And while, again, I've said it repeatedly, but I really want to say it one more time. If you are responsible, I support your ability to own a gun, but I do not think it is an inalienable right. I believe it is a privilege, one that you earn, and privileges can be taken away if you abuse them. And in my opinion, the Second Amendment has been, for far too long, by far too many people, it has been abused. So it should not be treated as a right anymore, but a privilege which can be taken away. I know I'm going to piss off some people by saying this, but that is how I feel about it. And I respect your right to have a different opinion from mine. But please come at me with logic. Don't just beat me over the head with the Second Amendment and how if you take away our guns, the criminals will have them and all that. I addressed that already. So come at me with something I haven't thought about. I think that's a good thing. If you're going to attack my point of view, come at me with a novel way of thinking, something I haven't heard before, something that truly refutes my argument. I'm all for logical discussion and for intellectual discourse and for disagreements of opinion. But don't just classify me as some gun grabber, devil person. I'm a person with very well-informed opinions, and I expect people who disagree with me to also be similarly well-informed and educated. Thank you very much, and that is my gun video. I didn't need to take a bunch of takes. All I needed was a track from... all it took was black metal. Black metal for the win.